Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're looking at a case that's, well, it's just really unsettling. It's from a true crime news video on YouTube, all about a sting operation targeting adults who are trying to contact minors online. And the thing is, this case is particularly disturbing because the suspect is a math tutor, someone you'd think parents could trust.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that these situations can really pop up anywhere. We often have these ideas about what kind of person or what their job might be. But cases like this really challenge those assumptions.
Yeah, for sure. So in this case, this watchdog group called Petrichor, they were working with the police in Fairfield, Connecticut. And they set up this sting operation where they had a decoy, pretending to be a 13-year-old girl online.
Wow. And that the amount of planning that goes into these operations is really impressive. I mean, they create a totally believable online profile for the decoy. And they make these chat logs that sound completely real. They even set up hidden cameras in a house. It's all about getting solid evidence.
Yeah, and in this case, the chat logs between the suspect, this 32-year-old math tutor, who called himself Mike Thrilla online, by the way. The chats between him and the decoy are just, well, they're creepy. Like, he starts calling her his soulmate and even talking about smoking weed with her.
What's really striking to me is that he actually admitted in the chats that he knew he could get in big trouble for talking to a 13-year-old, so he knew it was wrong, but he kept going.
It's wild, right? Like, what makes someone take that risk? He even got suspicious at one point and asked the decoy for a special picture. Maybe he wanted to make sure she was real or something. But even with those doubts, he still went to the sting house.
That's a really tough question. I mean, there's clearly a disconnect there between knowing the consequences and still doing it anyway. It makes you think about what's going on in their minds.
Exactly. And then comes the moment of truth. The suspect shows up at the sting house. And guess who's waiting for him? Chris Hansen. From To Catch a Predator.
Oh, wow. Bringing in Chris Hansen like that, it's definitely intentional. He's like the face of these stings. It really puts the pressure on the suspect.
Yeah, you can see in the video the guy's face goes white when Hansen comes out.
And the thing is, this suspect seems intelligent. He seems to understand the risks, but he still fell for it. It really makes you wonder about these stings and the people they catch.
For sure. Then the conversation between Hansen and the suspect, it gets super tense. The suspect tries to say he was just worried about the girl's safety.
Yeah, that's something we see a lot in these cases. They try to downplay what they did, make it sound like they had good intentions.
Right.
But then Hansen brings up the chat logs, and the suspect's story falls apart.
Yeah, it's hard to watch. He contradicts himself. And it just gets so awkward.
It's a classic example of denial. Even with the evidence right there, they can't admit what they did.
Totally. And the video shows everything, the arrest,
the
booking process, even the suspect's T-shirt. It had a math equation on it.
Oh, wow. That's ironic. I mean, he's supposed to be this educator, a math tutor, but he makes these completely irrational decisions.
Totally. And then he did something really interesting. He waives his right to remain silent and decides to talk to the detectives.
That can be risky. Usually it's better to stay quiet and talk to a lawyer first.
Yeah, but maybe he thought he could explain himself. Convince the detectives he wasn't a threat.
Maybe.
But from the interrogation excerpts, it doesn't seem like it worked.
No, it doesn't.
He keeps trying to downplay everything.
Yeah.
And blame other people.
Right, and you can see his body language in the video. He's fidgeting and sighing, which are signs of stress and maybe deception.
It's all there in the video. So in the end, he gets charged with one felony count. Criminal attempt to commit risk of injury to a minor. He pleaded guilty, got a suspended sentence, and was put on probation.
Wow, so he didn't get the worst possible outcome. But this case is still a huge red flag. It shows how dangerous things can be, even in places we think are safe.
It's a real wake-up call. I mean, this wasn't some random creep from the internet. This was a math tutor, someone who families trusted, someone who had access to kids. It's scary to think about.
It really is.
This case makes you think about a lot of things. And we want to hear what you think, too. So stick with us as we keep unpacking this case and what it all means.
This case brings up something that people have been arguing about for a long time. The whole ethics of these sting operations. Some say it's entrapment, like tricking people into committing crimes they wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, that's a good point. So legally, how do they decide what's entrapment and what's not?
Well, legally, entrapment is when the government basically makes someone commit a crime that they weren't already planning to commit.
So like they weren't predisposed to.
Right, exactly.
So in this case, I mean, the math tutor was definitely having these inappropriate conversations with the decoy. But does that automatically mean he was going to meet up with her? and actually
Yeah.
do something illegal? I mean, all we have are the chat logs. We don't really know what was going on in his head.
You're right, and that's what makes it so tricky. The people who support these stings, they say they're super important for catching predators and for making other people think twice before doing the same thing.
Right.
They say that these operations are usually targeting people who are actively looking for minors online and who have said they want to do illegal things.
Okay, so they're focusing on people who are already showing those intentions.
Exactly.
But I guess there's the other side of the argument, too.
Yeah, there are definitely concerns about these stings being unfair. Like maybe they target people who are vulnerable, people who don't really understand what they're getting into.
Right.
And some people worry that all the media attention around these cases can make people afraid and suspicious, and that could lead to false accusations.
Yeah, that's a really tough situation. It's like trying to find a balance between protecting kids
Yeah.
and making sure the legal system is fair.
Exactly. It's a constant balancing act.
And this case really shows how complicated it can be.
Yeah, it does.
Going back to the video for a sec, we see them arrest the suspect. And then he decides to waive his right to remain silent and talk to the detectives. What do you think about that?
Waiving that right is a big decision. It's usually best to stay quiet and get a lawyer involved.
Right.
But in this particular case, maybe he thought he could talk his way out of it, convince them that he wasn't a danger.
Yeah, maybe. But from the interrogation clips, it doesn't seem like that worked out too well for him.
No, it doesn't.
He keeps trying to downplay what he did and make excuses.
Yeah, and his body language in the video, all that fidgeting and sighing, makes you think he's stressed and maybe not being truthful.
It's all right there on camera.
Yeah.
Even his clothes are interesting. He's wearing this T-shirt with a math equation on it.
Wow, that's a detail that sticks with you. I mean, this guy is a math tutor. He's supposed to be all about logic and reason, but then he makes these decisions that just don't make sense.
It's like a contradiction.
Yeah.
It makes you realize that anyone can make bad choices.
Absolutely.
I mean, we all have weaknesses, times when our judgment is clouded.
Whether it's emotions or desires or just bad choices.
It can happen to anyone.
That's a good point. It reminds us that these situations are rarely simple. There's a lot of gray area. And it's important to look at them from different angles.
Yeah, for sure. This deep dive has really been a journey.
It has.
Like, we started out feeling shocked and disgusted.
Right.
And then we felt confused.
Yeah.
And I even felt a little bit of empathy for the suspect.
I understand that.
But at the same time, we can't forget what he did.
Absolutely not.
It was serious.
It was.
So as we move forward, what are the main things we should be thinking about?
Well, I think there are a few important points to remember. First, we have to acknowledge that online dangers are real. Predators are out there. And they're using new and sneaky ways to target kids.
It's scary to think about, but we can't just pretend it won't happen to our kids or in our communities.
Exactly. We need to educate ourselves and our kids about online safety. We need to talk openly about these risks.
And we need to be careful about what we believe when we see these cases in the media.
Yes. The media often makes these stories seem more dramatic than they are. They focus on the shocking parts.
Right.
But there's usually more to the story than what you see in a short video or a news article.
And even though it's hard, we need to be willing to challenge our own assumptions.
That's so important.
It's easy to just label the suspects as monsters,
Right.
but we have to remember they're human beings too,
They are.
even when they do terrible things.
It's about seeing the whole picture and understanding that there are bigger things at play too, like systems and societal factors that contribute to these situations.
This deep dive has really made me think about all of that.
Me too.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
So how do we as a society deal with online child predation while still upholding things like due process and fairness?
That's the big question.
It's a conversation we need to keep having.
We do.
And I think technology plays a big role in all of this.
Absolutely.
The internet has connected us in amazing ways, but it's also created new ways for predators to find victims.
Right. The anonymity of the internet and how easy it is to access. It can make people bolder. People who might not do these things in person.
Right.
And with social media and messaging apps being so popular, it's even easier for predators to connect with potential victims.
Yeah, it's not just strangers online,
Yeah.
right? Like this case shows, it could be people we know, people we trust,
Exactly.
people who are already in a position of power over kids.
It's a huge wake-up call for parents, educators, anyone who works with children. We have to be so careful. We need to create a culture where kids feel safe talking about these things.
Yeah, like teaching them how to recognize red flags and to speak up if something feels wrong.
Exactly. And we need to support law enforcement, too.
Yeah, they have a tough job.
They do. These investigations are complex, especially with online crimes.
They need the right resources and training to deal with all of this.
Absolutely.
This deep dive has really been eye-opening.
Yeah.
The fact that this is happening and how difficult it is to stop it.
It's a huge problem.
There's no easy answer.
No, there isn't. It's going to take a lot of work from everyone.
So as we wrap up here, what can our listeners do to make a difference?
Well, I think the first thing is to be informed. Learn about the risks, the warning signs, the resources that are out there.
Right.
Talk to your kids about online safety. Make sure they know they can come to you if something's wrong.
Yeah, create that open communication.
Exactly. And if you see something suspicious, report it.
Like to the police or to organizations that deal with child exploitation.
Right.
Be proactive.
And don't be afraid to speak out about this issue.
Support laws that protect kids online.
Let your elected officials know it's important to you.
Our voices can make a difference.
They can.
We can work together to make the internet safer for everyone.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a really powerful conversation.
It has.
Thanks for joining us today, everyone. We hope this was helpful and that it got you thinking.
Yeah.
Until next time, stay safe.
And stay curious.